Welcome back to The Explainer. Today we're doing something really fascinating. We're going to literally unroll and examine the architectural blueprint of a modern spiritual movement. We'll be doing a deep dive into the foundational theology that maps out not just individual beliefs, but a highly systematic approach to reshaping all of society. Let's see exactly how this is engineered from the ground up.
So our source material today is The Law of Happiness by Ryuho Okawa. And for this explainer, we're focusing strictly on Chapter 4, which is titled Introduction to Happy Science. This chapter is absolutely pivotal. Why? Because the author uses it to strip away all the advanced teachings and just get right back to the absolute basics. It's really framed as an entry point, a foundational theology meant to be accessible to anyone, translating these abstract, heavy spiritual concepts into a structured step-by-step system.
Okay, let's dive into this. We've got 6 structured sections to explore today. First, exploring the right mind. Then, the principle of love, the principle of wisdom, the principle of reflection, and the principle of progress. And finally, we'll wrap up with the age of the sun.
Section 1. Exploring the right mind. This is the core objective.
Before we jump into the specific rules and practices here, the text argues that we need a foundational orientation first. They call this the exploration of the right mind. You know how we usually separate church and state or faith and science? Well, the text makes a pretty fascinating distinction here. It explicitly states that this exploration is entirely separate from secular academic science or traditional schooling. Sure, the physical world has its own academic rules, but the right mind is all about aligning with the fundamental spiritual laws of the universe.
Now, what's really interesting about this is how the author makes this abstract goal actionable. He basically modernizes the ancient Buddhist Eightfold Path into something highly streamlined. Let's face it, ancient texts can be a bit dense for us today, right? So instead, we get the 4 pillars, or the 4 principles of happiness: love, wisdom, reflection, and progress. Think of these as the 4 load-bearing columns holding up this entire belief system. Let's check them out one by one.
Section 2. The principle of love. This is the primary gateway. The text positions love as the ultimate gateway into the teaching, mostly because it's a concept we can all easily grasp, but it draws a very sharp line between 2 distinct types of love. On one side, we've got taking love. This is demanding affection, demanding attention, or validation from others. And the doctrine claims this is actually a massive root cause of unhappiness and conflict. On the flip side is giving love. The text mandates that true spiritual happiness doesn't start until you make the active, selfless choice to give rather than take.
It's essentially a scalable spiritual framework. You don't start by trying to save the whole world. You literally start right in your own living room. According to the book, this giving love is meant to begin with your immediate family and your friends. But as your practice develops, you're supposed to scale it up into what the text calls great compassion. And that's a world-encompassing mercy that seeks the salvation and happiness of humanity at large.
Moving on to Section 3, the principle of wisdom, adapting and surviving. There's a really striking assertion in the text here. It says our religion is not simply a religion of returning to ancient times. It is a religion that develops. The author is explicitly framing this belief system as an open system. It's almost like treating religion as an operating system that constantly needs modern software updates to stay relevant. It's actively designed to absorb new knowledge, new tech, and new societal structures, rather than just rigidly clinging to the past.
And this intellectual openness, it's presented as an absolute requirement to keep the teachings from becoming obsolete. So the principle of wisdom isn't just about sitting around reading holy books. It's about taking raw, modern information and actively converting that data into highly actionable spiritual wisdom, stuff that can actually help people navigate the modern world every single day.
Section 4, the principle of reflection. This is all about internal maintenance.
And this brilliantly illustrates the contrast between the pillars. While wisdom looks outward at the world, reflection is a deeply personal, almost mechanical process of internal maintenance. The source outlines a very strict sequence here. First, you have to identify your negative thoughts. The text actually describes these as spiritual dirt that drags you down. Second, through deep reflection, meditation, and prayer, you confront that negativity head-on. And finally, you experience a literal spiritual cleansing, intentionally dropping the heavy weight of those negative thoughts.
To make this abstract idea tangible, the author uses a very literal metaphor. He compares it to someone who hasn't bathed in 10 years, finally stepping out of a hot bath. It's meant to be a real, physical sensation of washing away that spiritual dirt, leaving you feeling warm, incredibly light, and totally refreshed.
Section 5, the principle of progress. Time for outward worldly action.
So if reflection is your internal maintenance, progress is your outward action.
And here, the text takes a highly pragmatic turn. The author explicitly encourages worldly success for believers, which is a pretty striking departure from, say, traditional monks taking vows of poverty, right? But there's a strict caveat here. This success absolutely must be used to expand positive influence and spread truth. It's not about feeding personal greed. Success, in this view, is simply a tool to gain greater reach.
The text also explicitly rejects the idea, common in some philosophies, that this world is purely a place of suffering that we just have to endure. No way. Instead, it advocates for achieving a continuum of happiness. The doctrine emphasizes a state of being that, quite literally, penetrates both this world and the next. You're meant to be successful and happy right here, right now, and then seamlessly carry that exact state into the afterlife.
Which brings us to Section 6, the Age of the Sun, the Utopian Vision.
If those 4 principles we just covered are the pillars, this next concept is the finished structure of our blueprint. As Chapter 4 wraps up, it transitions seamlessly into the vision presented in Chapter 5, titled Believing in the Arrival of the Age of the Sun. The author explains that the culmination of these 4 individual practices isn't just about personal enlightenment. It's actually meant to lead directly to a massive global shift.
The ultimate goal for society here is transforming the modern world into a Buddha land, basically a utopia right here on Earth. The text argues that just trying to save individuals one by one is essentially playing a game of whack-a-mole. You help one unhappy person and another one immediately pops up. The doctrine claims the only real solution is macro-level change. We're talking about building a utopian society by ensuring the widespread pursuit of the right mind and those 4 principles across the entire globe.
So we've unpacked the blueprint, moving from the foundational right mind, up through the 4 pillars, all the way to the age of the sun. Which leaves me with this final question for you to chew on. Can a highly structured, step-by-step formula for personal happiness truly be scaled up to engineer a global utopia? Or is human nature simply too complex for any one blueprint? Thanks for joining me on this explainer. I'll see you in the next one.